constantly...
Well, the people that are laughing at you don't know that the government admits that there's giant testing programs spraying aluminum dioxide, barium salts, and other things, that a lot of the jet fuel has it added to it, that NASA admits the atmosphere is over 20% darker. I think what's best with friends is to give them a copy of, say, a film like What in the World Are They Spraying, that, by the way, is available at Infowars.com, or have a showing so they can see the document, see government admitting it, to understand. Because if you just try to talk to somebody who's totally asleep, they're going to laugh at you. That's why I think films and books or magazine articles or links to like Infowars.com or this human event story about, you know, shutting down part of national parks, rewilding. I mean, this is nothing. Already federal land out west, they're shutting down the majority of it, period, and saying no humans allowed. You know, first it's, well, you got to hike in. Now they're saying you can't be on it, period. Humans are bad. And it's all about a power grab. Does that answer your question?
And I'm trying, you know, as a 50-ish-year-old American woman who's seen a lot of things go on, I try to stand tall. And people laughed at me during Y2K. Well, I was a Girl Scout. From 5 years old on, my first promise was to be prepared. And so my whole life I lived that way. People laughed after Y2K and said it didn't happen. I said, I think it taught me something about being prepared and knowing what I needed. And that's what I used it. It was a resource to me.
No, I hear you. I appreciate your call. Look, Y2K, I never believed in it or promoted it until the last month or two, because everybody was saying, you're wrong, it's real. And I saw the Navy saying, you know, in the Washington Post, 67 cities, total power off, all computers to go down. And they use it as an excuse to get everybody to put in all the new chips that had the tracker backdoor stuff they now admit. And so, and there were some problems here and there. None of that is compared to the banker implosion, the wars, everything. I hope we make it out of all this. The probability of more crises is intensifying. I mean, look at areas of Europe. I mean, some areas there are in full collapse, like Greece. We'll be back. Now, Friday, I spent some time getting into incredible news on the neurological disorder autism front. And I'd seen this information before, but here it was in another big study. So we're going to be talking about that coming up in the next segment. Continue with your calls. Scott in Idaho, you're on the air. Scott, go ahead.
Good day, Alex. Thank you for taking my call. I'm a pastor, kind of out in the sticks, and just wanted to kind of call up and encourage you, not only what you're doing, but also just in some of the statements that you've made recently. With some frequency, I hear you referring to kind of the clergy response team, and the comments you make, I'm sure they're not intentional, but sometimes they seem pretty absolute. They kind of paint all of us who are Christian ministers with a broad brush. And for those of us who are awake and who are not only seeking to teach the Bible to our folks, but also shepherd them through life, and we're doing our best to wake them up and help them to know that this is a spiritual issue at the base. And I'm just a little concerned that maybe some of these comments, when they're made, and they sound pretty broad on your program, may cause some undue concern for some folks, not only for those in the church, but for those maybe who are seeking at this point, and they may hear some of those. I've just got some concern that they might be driven away from some of us who are awake and really seeking.
Well, here's the deal. I don't get into denominations. I don't get into all the endless debates about this and that. I know I'm as wicked as the day is long. I love God. We are being murdered. There is total attack going on. Most churches are just give it to God and go along, and the government's God, and Romans 13, and I'll assure you, they're wrong. And so I'm here with a frontal assault. Here's the information as I see it. And it tends to knock people off their horse and wake them up. And I've had a huge effect. You don't argue with success. I know I've got lots of room for improvement, and I improve all the time thanks to the good Lord above. And I need criticism. I need it, and I pray every day that I be a better person and try to present things better. And I get in nasty moods. I mean, Friday, I threw fits a couple times on air. Don't you know this stuff gets to me? I have to control The fear is gone of being killed or set up or them coming after my family. Instead, I get mad that I have to be in the position fighting these globalists all day when they're destroying themselves. It's so stupid. I want it to stop. So in place of the fear is rage. And people say, well, you shouldn't be angry all the time. You know what? I found that's where the action begins. And I don't know how to explain it to you, but we need to get moving here. We need to get up and do something. You see what I'm saying?
I've got no argument with anything that you just said. I guess I would be hopeful that there would be some way to perhaps balance it. I know that you've interviewed, Baldwin, I believe. Baldwin's.
Yeah, Chuck Baldwin, good guy.
Okay, and so I know that you understand that all of us aren't asleep, where all of us aren't in league with the enemy. So I want to.
Well, we're all in league with the devil in one way or another. The difference is where your heart is. And all I'm saying is that all I know is I've been to probably 20 churches, and all I hear, even if they're Christians, you can tell if they've got the Spirit of the Lord or not, is I still then a bunch of government worship and a bunch of evil added to it. And it's sick, but I'm confused. What are you saying I'm doing that's going to confuse people?
When statements are made that are very absolute, and I understand you're that kind of individual, especially when you get fired up. I appreciate that. I tend that direction myself. But that when you make a broad, sweeping statement that, as a for instance, that... Stay
there. I got a guest coming up, but a minute or two on the other side. I want you to be able to finish your point here. I want to hear this genuine criticism, because I need this information. And then we've got Dr. Corey Gold with incredible info coming up. Stay with us. We're going to continue with phone calls and Dr. Corey Gold with us a little bit into the next hour. Study links autism with industrial food and environmental toxins. There's been studies for years. This is what's happening. When you got cancer, neurological disorders, diabetes, degeneration of the joints, life expectancy dropping despite all the heroic medical efforts, something's going on. Gee, it's being done on purpose. That's the fact. So that is coming up with Dr. Corey Gold and more here in a moment. Always great having him on because he told us this a year ago. This is what they talk about. Well, wait till I get to it. Then they're going to shut down large areas of public lands and national parks to human access or partially, all teaching you Agenda 21. FDA targets nanoparticles in food, appliances over health risk, blood-brain barrier, incredible news. Detroit News reports, happily, GM to build its 2013 Cadillacs in China. I remember a couple years ago when they took over General Motors with your tax money, the federal government did, and there was 20-something billion total. It's $5 billion to move to China, $4 or $5 billion to move to Eastern Europe, $5+ billion to move to Brazil, and then move some stuff to Mexico, anywhere but America. Your tax money pays to move your jobs out of the country. That's what the New World Order is. That's what corporate welfare is. That's what crony capitalism is. And the answer, the media tells us, is socialism. They say the free market doesn't work. Well, yeah, when crooks take control of it, it doesn't. It's not free market. Like the French are running to a socialist now who's won the first round of elections, taking control of their parliament. They're so desperate they ran to the socialist and are going to probably throw out Sarkozy, who's horrible. I don't like Sarkozy. He's terrible. But the socialist, you already pay on average over 80% in taxes. They have the highest taxes in the world in France, one way or another. And you guys think that's going to fix it. More of it. What a shame. What a shame. What a shame. That's what they sell here. The answer is socialism. What do the big mega banks want? They want socialism so they get your wealth and transfer it offshore. They want controlled markets. I just can't believe it. GM to build 2013 Cadillac in China. Unbelievable. Starting next year. Post-industrial world. That's the name of the game. All right, now I'm going to just spend 2 minutes with him because our guest is waiting. But I want to go to the caller. Scott in Idaho was in the short little segment, and he said, look, I'm a pastor, and your absolute statements may turn people away from God. Well, my job is to cover the news here. I don't hide the fact I'm a Christian, but I'm not going to go into the briar patch or the tar baby of these thousands of denominations fighting with each other all day over, they got monopoly on God, so come to their church. My relationship with God is in my heart. Okay, now, but I'd like to hear how you say I'm giving absolute statements. Go ahead.
Okay, first of all, I've got to apologize for miscommunicating. Had nothing to do, my statement had nothing to do with you driving folks away from God. Simply for folks like myself who are trying to wake folks up to the greater reality, that we're looking at with the New World Order, that it can create a greater suspicion of us going in for folks like myself with a statement that has been made along the lines of this, that your minister is probably part of the clergy response team at this point, or your minister is working with the government. And it sounds like that's been your experience. But for some of us that aren't in that position, it can hamper. When those statements are made that absolutely, then that can make folks suspicious of me right off the bat. And let's face it, I've got a hard enough time as a preacher.
Say that again? Yeah. You're saying like if you send people to the show and they hear all this wild stuff being discussed, it scares them.
Yes, those who I have talked to, and if folks are already listening to your show, which I hope they are, then if I meet them and have an opportunity to share and reinforce it, they may be unduly suspicious of me or folks like me.
Well, look, they want to be timid. They want, you're telling them Hitler's a bad guy in 1940, and they just don't want to believe it yet. In 1939, Time magazine was still saying Hitler was a great guy. My father, when he was a little boy, they still called Stalin Uncle Joe on the news and how great he was. The guy killed probably twice what Hitler did. This is our government made a deal with Mao Zedong. They're naive, and I understand. See, here's why the globalists have one over on us. What they're doing is so crazy, so wild, so over the top, people can't believe it's happening. And isn't that the devil's biggest trick? When a burglar comes to your house to rob you, do they want to come when you're there? No, generally they want to come when you're gone. They don't want you to know they're there. They want to sneak up. And the globalists have snuck up, and now they've gotten so close, they're in our living room, and people don't want to believe it's happening. It's happening. It's going on. It's real. And look, I know I turn a lot of people off. I've never had a calculated plan for my show. I've just gone with my gut, my instinct, my facts, and just let the chips fall where they may. There's no scripting here. That's why the show's popular despite all the problems. Some days I hear the show, it's terrible. Other times I hear it, it's genius, in my humble opinion. The point is that, yes, it takes different strokes for different people. All kinds make the world go around. Whatever floats your boat, all those sayings. It's going to turn some people off. Because reality, and I know we're very close to what reality is crazy. Look, here's an example. I told people 2 years ago, because it was in the executive announcements, that they were funding billions of dollars to send General Motors overseas and to basically shut most of it down in the U.S. And people sent me emails, and I got calls saying that's not true. Here it is, Detroit News today. Cadillacs to be made in China. And they've got all these excuses of why they do it and the rest of it. So I sit here and I deal with this. I tell people that most of the GMO crops sterilize and reduce fertility. I tell people there's cancer viruses and vaccines. It's true. It's true.